Hi, I'm Podchef Neil Foley, and I want to take a few minutes of your time to discuss an ongoing and worsening problem: the wholesale poisoning of our food system by bureaucratic and corporate consolidation. For the past 4 months, dating back to April, the U.S. has been in the throes of an insidious attack. The unseen terrorist has wreaked untold havoc, sickened more than 1,250 people in 43 states, killed 2, and cost the food industry over $250 million. Not to mention the cost to taxpayers to cover government ineptitude and industry graft. Since 1995, there have been more than 20 incidents of disease outbreak linked to lettuce, spinach, and other leafy greens. Since 1998, there have been 13 Salmonella outbreaks linked to tomatoes, the most recent outbreak being the largest Salmonella outbreak in the history of the United States, and the largest foodborne illness outbreak of any kind in the last 10 years. Tomatoes, the FDA says, let's call the whole witch hunt off. Without much fanfare, the Food and Drug Administration has ended their investigation of Lypersicum lypersicum, one of the first genetically modified foods to switch their focus to peppers. A jalapeno pepper, grown in Mexico and stored in a Texas border town warehouse, has tested positive for the same rare strain of Salmonella that has confounded federal disease investigators for months. So like hounds on the scent of a fox, a new chase is begun. At what cost to the industry, consumers, and taxpayers? This latest occurrence has shaken consumer confidence, as the inability to rapidly trace these illnesses back to the source has led many to question the ability of the federal government to adequately protect the food supply. This has come about at a time not only of increased awareness of food safety, but also higher food costs and prices. The Associated Press released a poll stating that almost half of Americans have changed their buying habits since the beginning of the Salmonella outbreak. Meanwhile, the FDA has blamed reliance on outdated paper records as one of the delays in clearing up tomatoes from the most wanted list. A cry for more government regulation and improved traceback can be heard echoing around Congress. Congress is setting up hearings to explore traceback and food safety more closely, yet the tracebacks done by federal investigators to date have failed to provide a cause for the outbreak. Even though the current focus is on Mexican-grown jalapeno peppers, authorities still don't know where the peppers became tainted: on the farm, in a Texas warehouse, or at some stop in between, such as at a packing house. Congress has uncovered flaws in the CDC and the FDA's ability to rapidly identify and trace back contaminated food to its source. This points to weaknesses that exist in our food safety system, and there have been cries for a stronger food safety legislation, additional resources for the FDA, and an urgent need for reform. Opinionists have stated that the cost associated with the outbreak should finally convince Congress to both require a traceback system that allows a method to quickly discover the source of foodborne illnesses and to stop its spread, but how do tags and databases fight disease outbreaks? Opinionists also say the inability of federal authorities to find and contain the source of this largest outbreak of foodborne illness in 10 years should finally overcome the main objection to farm-to-fork traceback systems to pinpoint the source of contamination. But doesn't the term farm-to-fork really imply one of the tightest traceback systems there is? Opinionists continue to say a system that uses labels, barcodes, and other tracking methods for agricultural products would involve added costs. Still, the current system has shown that it can be even more costly to human health, as well as to everyone involved in bringing the food to consumers. But it's one thing to track a container, a truckload, or a box of something that's already done with invoices and shipping records. How do you trace a single vegetable once it's been separated from its friends and digested? And yet, opinionists cry, Congress should pass a traceback system for our food products. However, there has been a similar attempt by the USDA to do the same thing with livestock. A system to tag and track every farm animal for supposed reasons of food security, public health safety, and disease prevention. The USDA alone is crying for more funds for basic services, yet they spent over $100 million on the National Animal Identification System, which has gone nowhere, is highly invasive, making farmers more tracked than the worst sorts of criminals, and is virtually impossible to implement without destroying fragile farm economies and increasing the cost of foods even further with very little gain. If the USDA were to have a tagging program for animals in place and approach disease control in the same way the FDA has approached the hunt for Salmonella, the landscape would be littered with carcasses and funeral pyres reminiscent of England in 2001, all for a case of mistaken identity. Now, if we want real food security, we'll do away with the corporate and government bureaucratic involvement in our food system. We will stop looking to a nanny state to coddle us, and we'll take matters into our own hands. If we want safer foods, then we will look closer to home. Over 40% of common ingredients in the U.S. are imported. The average item on a dinner table has traveled 1,500 miles at untold costs in fuel, storage, and infrastructure. Fewer and fewer companies control more and more of agriculture and food production in increasingly larger operations. This centralized industrial model has clearly let us down when 1,250 people become sick across 43 states from the same contamination issue. Instead of demanding a costly tracking system which will take years and untold trial and error retests, let's employ a much cheaper one which can be rolled out tomorrow. Buy directly from local farmers or grow your own. When we purchase or grow foods locally and seasonally, not only do we get the best value, flavor, and quality, but we build stronger communities and put money where it belongs, in the people's pockets and not some CEO's stock fund. Local and regional food production is safer from bioterrorism, easier to monitor, and less wasteful. If you're a farmer and I buy produce from you which makes me or others sick, we know exactly where to go to solve the problem. What's more is the farmer, upon realizing his produce or food has been contaminated, can contact his customers directly. A two-way feedback system for pennies the government wouldn't be able to roll out for hundreds of millions of dollars. If you're a butcher and you sell me bad meat, and you sell only locally produced and slaughtered product, the traceback is short and swift. Furthermore, it's in the butcher, baker, and farmer's best interest in not allowing anything foul to happen because consumers vote with their pocketbooks. Is the food at a farmer's market any safer than that at a grocery store? In all likelihood, a lot safer, but the only way to tell is to talk to the farmer who grew it, visit their farm, learn more about it. If you grow it yourself, and you really should try to raise your own food in some way, either in a window box, container on your patio, dig up that annoying and costly lawn that you have to mow every weekend, or in a garden out back, or a community plot. If you grow it yourself, not only will you have the pride of accomplishment, but if there is a problem, the outbreak stops at your front door. Let's be sensible out there, everybody. Let's stop asking the government to do our work for us. We can probably do it better, quicker, and cheaper anyway ourselves. But let's ask them to make it easier for local food systems to operate. Educate, don't regulate. And together, let's all make sure we can eat locally, freshly, safely, and better. Thanks for listening. Keep on growing.